Hey, this is Mike with Christian Meds. This week I want to talk a little bit about asking questions. So let's get started. So when it comes to the Bible and asking questions, some people get very intimidated. They don't want to come off as ignorant. They don't want to come off as not knowing. So a lot of times people don't even ask some of the basic questions, or questions I would consider basic, which is even like, why did we choose the books we chose? Some of those questions never get asked. How we ended up with the books we ended up with. If there's lots of situations where there's lots of good questions for people to ask, and there's lots of credible people that can answer those types of questions. You can also do a Google search on those types of things, and there's lots of ways to learn the answers. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Questions are actually a healthy part of a sanctification process for any Christian. When it comes to me and my beliefs, I started out quite fundamental. I wanted to figure out the right answer. So I said, okay, I'm going to go back as far back in history. And for me, St. Augustine was a big influence on my theology. I also, got very much into a fundamentalist type and Calvinistic type belief system, which worked fine for me to start. But when I had my divorce in my first marriage, I actually had a pastor tell me to go back to my abuser. And that's when all of a sudden I realized that sometimes treating Scripture in a very wooden matter really has negative effects on people's lives. And just because somebody knows a lot of Scripture and knows a lot of Bible does not mean they're going to be loving and compassionate to you. So who you put in authority in your life is very important, and who you have that you can ask questions is also very important. So what are these things that I really want to kind of stress when it comes to, trying to give people a good foundation of ways to love on people and to love God, is to be very careful who you put in authority in your life. Not all pastors are as educated, not all pastors are as loving as others. Some have a very loving heart but don't know Scriptures very well. Some people know Scriptures very well but are very rigid and very mean sometimes in the way they treat people. And that just means that people are, human. I'm not saying that any of these people are not saved. I'm not saying anything like that. What I'm saying is that you need to find places where it's safe to ask questions, because that's truly the only way you grow, when you start asking good questions. Now, some questions, if you come up with the wrong answer, it can be problematic, So one of the things, the classic things in my life that, comes in my mind is the virgin birth. Was Mary a virgin at the time Jesus was born? That is a question, Well, that becomes a very dangerous question, because if you say she lied, because if you use basically the simplest answer is usually the truth type of thing, then basically you could say, well, the simplest thing is that a 14, 15-year-old girl lied about getting pregnant. Well, there's a lot of aspects of, there's a lot of layers to that question, right? Because if she lied, then also the apostles lied, and then you're basically going, okay, not only one person lied, but all these people lied about it, and all these people, were able to go to their death, were actually crucified for this lie, and then you start going, well, how credible is it that that would be the answer? I so sometimes when you're asking the question, what answer you come up with, what the simplest answer sometimes may not be the best answer. So these are some of the things where you just got to always think about it. You always got to take a step back, and get more than one person's opinion on something. Because sometimes the first answer you get isn't the correct one. Man's interpretation of the Bible is not inerrant. Okay? So what the scriptures may say, you may be able to say, I believe this text means X, but X may not be right. And that's okay, but you can learn, and sometimes you end up reading the same scriptures over and over and over again before you end up getting what the true meaning is. Sometimes you have to go look at commentaries. Sometimes you have to take it back to the original language, because sometimes the transition from, the original, the Greek and the Hebrew, or the Aramaic, into English can lose something, can lose something in the translation. Sometimes, just like even the classic thing of the difference between an angel, what we think of an angel, and what we think of a messenger, The word actually, and a lot of times, means messenger. Sometimes we have a lot of baggage that we end up attaching to the word angel. So a lot of times you have to dig deeper to find out the true answer. So sometimes what you come up with as a conclusion in the first place is not truly the conclusion in the second place. In other words, like even probably the most quoted scripture ever, John 3:16, God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that nobody should perish, nobody should be saved through him. There are so many issues with the translation there, okay? And I probably, botched the words a little bit. But, one of the things is the word so is not in there. So when it says he so loved the world, the word so, not in the original writing at all. But we're so used to saying it that way that they've left that part of the translation in. And the word begotten, now they realize more means unique, not, so they've actually, clarified the translation of that word from the original language, which basically now it says, God sent his only unique Son to save the world, and he did that through his love. So there's lots of times that you can ask questions, there's lots of things that you can end up doing, but just really don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions to me, don't be afraid to ask questions to your pastor, but don't take everything with a grain of salt and take everything with multiple sources before you start saying, this is truly what I believe, because if you're truly doing the Christian walk, what you believe 5 years from now will not be what you believe today. So, and you will grow closer to God throughout the process. So that's some of my thoughts this week. Hope you have a great